Senate Democrats note in the ruling 5 justices did in fact concur that the House violated the Constitution. They say this sets up a precedent going forward that both houses are equal under the law. The total budget for this House Appropriations Subcommittee came in at $11.6 billion. As for whether lawmakers figure out this session how to bring more traffic into this airport remains to be seen. Teresa? Repairs to these 28 gates used for emergency flood control are expected to be finished by about 2016. Though the National Socialist Movement says it is their intention to assume legal control of the government, they say it is not their intention to exile anyone.
Capitol Update's Barbara Sharp takes us to the scene of the first debate.
Here in the Senate, it was decided people fleeing for their lives could carry concealed weapons, but only if they're a lawful gun owner, even if they don't have a concealed weapons permit. While supporters of the Supreme Court decision say it helps to legally define the term disabled, opponents believe the new definition is just too narrow. At the U.S. Supreme Court, I am Barbara Sharp. Shutdown of the federal government impacts North Dakota in yet another way, as half the U.S. Attorney's Office is furloughed this morning. If you build it, they will come. That's what Representative Alan Williams said as he spoke in favor of what's being called the film bill, but not everyone agreed. Shoeboxes collected here in Bismarck will go to Zambia, India, and Kenya. What's so special about coming to Bismarck, North Dakota for this Rib Fest? New commissioners dug in and did their best to deal with a mass of healthcare data that's still coming in from hospitals days after the governor's submission deadline. And here's another one. A new study shows North Dakota is tops in the nation in beer shipments per capita, or per person based on age. The analysis was done by the Beer Institute, a Washington, D.C. based trade association representing brewers, importers, and suppliers. It found nearly 46 gallons of beer were shipped to North Dakota for every person of legal drinking age last year. And a yacht owned by the 3 affiliated tribes has made its maiden voyage on Lake Sakakawea. The 149-passenger boat will be used for entertaining guests at the tribe's casino near Newtown, and eventually for riverboat gambling on the Fort Berthold Reservation. Tribal officials unveiled the boat Wednesday and took it out for its initial cruise on the Missouri River Reservoir. The boat is named Sakakawea, same as the lake, but with an alternate spelling. Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board are trying to figure out what was going on in that cockpit. NBC's Kevin Tibbles has our report. A man cleaning out a large tank containing liquid used to treat irrigation water ends up almost drowning in it instead. It happened in an Arvin in an almond orchard near Rancho and Sebastian Roads. Cardinal Raymond Burke of the Roman Catholic Church celebrated Mass with parishioners at the Cathedral of the Holy Spirit. Pilots and planes, that's what certain senators had on their minds this week as they were brainstorming ways to bring more air traffic into Tallahassee. Senator Jack Laffella says he thinks he's figured out the problem.
The root of this problem is the federal government, just like every other problem we have. The FAA changed the requirement for the hours of experience that pilots have to have in different levels of planes.
Latvella says all pilots must now have the same amount of hours, whether they fly a commuter aircraft or a larger commercial jet. This creates a shortage, he says, since pilots go to the bigger airlines where they can make more money, resulting in fewer flights between Florida cities. He wants to give $1 million to Broward College and Embry-Riddle University to quickly and safely train more pilots. As an alternative, Senator Jeff Brandes suggests providing loans to flight students who commit to flying in-state. Others agree.
I wholly, really, truly know that being able to put an investment into pilots, because this is creating jobs, it's creating careers for young people, is the way to go.
Creating opportunity was on the minds of both subcommittees. Key budget items for the House include a recommendation of $185 million for total economic development, which maintains current funding for Visit Florida and Space Florida. Expecting pushback, a new proposal for one of these programs was mentioned Senate side.
There is one potentially controversial item that I have put in this budget, in the proviso language, and it deals with Space Florida.
And a new launch pad near the Kennedy Space Center known as Shiloh on what is considered green space with good fishing. Latvella says the federal government is currently conducting an environmental analysis. The total budget for this House Appropriations Subcommittee came in at $11.6 billion. As for whether lawmakers figure out this session how to bring more traffic into this airport remains to be seen. Teresa?
7 years ago, my father brought forth a new nation, a conceived of liberty dedicated to the proposition that all men and women are created equal.
He's spry, he's bilingual, and he's 100 years old. A 4th of July baby a century ago, Leo Vole is having his cake and eating it too. A special place in the Mandan Parade makes it seem like one big birthday party. Leo takes it all in stride. He's more excited to talk about his military service during World War II than his Independence Day celebrity.
Like a lot of foxholes.
Leo was born in Hyle, North Dakota on
July the 4th, 1913.
He served in the U.S. military, married, and raised 7 children. Not only can Leo recite the beginnings of the Gettysburg Address, he can also recite a childhood poem in German, then interpret for you in English.
Ich bin noch klein, doch groß genug, mein Lied zu singen. Es klingt so hell, es klingt so schön, von lauter Himmel singen. I'm little, but big enough to sing a song. It rings so loud, it rings so clear, from all the heavenly things.
In Mandan, for KX News, Barbara Sharp.
So far, y'all have been fairly honest.
What does that mean? Honesty is putting America to an honesty test. Unmanned kiosks stocked with the drinks invite people to take a bottle in exchange for $1. It's all on the honor system. Bismarck is representing North Dakota in the 50-state social experiment.
There's a lot of honest people around here, and I would say they would even pay $1.50 if they had to.
The company is rather stealthy in its approach, going to such lengths as to require Brian, the undercover honesty detective, to keep switching it up.
We'll switch out clothes so we don't seem like we're loitering and people don't think, oh, that person probably is watching the stand. So it just gives a feeling that they're not being watched by like a big brother kind of thing.
Once the company compiles their results, they'll be able to tell you things like whether blondes are more honest than brunettes, and if people who wear sunglasses tend to drop their dollars more often than not. As for how the actual monitoring takes place,
No, well, I don't think.
apparently the company's scientific method is top secret, but they stress the experiment is just for fun. How honest are people in North Dakota? To find out, go to the National Honesty Index. In Bismarck, for KX News, Barbara Sharp. Did the House violate the Florida Constitution by adjourning session with more than 72 hours to go without the consent of the Senate? Yes, says the Florida Supreme Court. In a ruling, they say, quote, the petitioners have failed to show that in the circumstances presented here, the issuance of a writ of mandamus would produce any beneficial result. Accordingly, the emergency petition for writ is denied. Here's the rest of the story on what many are calling this week a constitutional crisis.
No, you're way ahead of me. I'm just, we just finished the day. We'll talk about all our options tonight.
That may have been the Senate's first response when asked about the constitutionality of the House adjourning sine die early Tuesday afternoon, but it was hardly the last. By the next day, Senate President Andy Gardner was saying,
At some point, whether it's this week or in the future, there will need to be a discussion before a court to exactly interpret what that is.
The future actually came this week when individual Senate Democrats filed an emergency petition with the Florida Supreme Court. The sticking point is a provision in the Florida Constitution which states, neither house shall adjourn for more than 72 consecutive hours except pursuant to concurrent resolution. Senate Democrats say the House violated this provision and
it's not okay with us. The same men who make the laws should be compelled to obey them.
But in a response filed with the court Friday morning, the House argues senators are failing to recognize the distinction between a more temporary adjournment and sine die adjournment, the latter signaling an end to session. An agreement to adjourn, the House says, does not apply to sine die. Senate Democrats say there was someone in Tallahassee all along who could have and should have intervened to avoid the entire matter.
I would like for the governor to have stepped up initially earlier this year, even during the committee cycle, because he is the head of the executive branch of the state of Florida.
Senate Democrats note in the ruling 5 justices did in fact concur that the House violated the Constitution. They say this sets up a precedent going forward that both houses are equal under the law. And just a little bit ago, Senate President Andy Gardner issued a statement saying he appreciated Leader Joyner and the efforts of her caucus to get swift resolution to this constitutional question. And just a little bit ago, House Speaker Steve Crisafulli, he issued a statement saying, quote, he still believes one chamber does not need to seek the permission of the other chamber to adjourn. But 5 justices disagreed. In fact, according to the new interpretation of the Florida Supreme Court, the Senate violated their constitutional duty throughout this session when they adjourned for more than 72 hours without the House's consent in the form of a concurrent resolution. Going on, he says, with the lawsuits over and a little time to reflect, I trust we can return with a new level of civility on both sides. We will then make up for some time and then some. Teresa?
It was always thought that maybe there was a person there, but then you would go and investigate and there was nothing. And so the story, the question is, where did it come from?
The legend of the North Dakota stack monster. But it's only part legend when employees through the years bear witness to the same strange happenings. Coughs, creaks, and footsteps. It was the early 1970s, and it's still unexplained. Here in the Liberty Memorial Building, former home of the State Historical Society of North Dakota.
And you would hear unexplained noises that weren't necessarily associated with a building creak. And it could be somebody sounding like somebody was coughing, maybe somebody was clearing their throat. You could also hear footsteps.
Human beings weren't the only ones to notice.
Former director of the State Historical Society came in one time with his dog, and the dog's hair stood on end.
Because there was no explanation, employees dubbed the phenomenon the stack monster.
We said that the stack monster probably lived back in this area because he could roam freely up and down between the various stairs.
Employees also reported the south entrance doors opening on their own and an unknown man walking from the elevator to the storage room. The question remains, where did all those sounds come from?
There was never any explanation to why it was happening.
In Bismarck for KX News, at the apparently one-time haunted Liberty Memorial Building, Barbara Sharp.